What's up, guys? Dave Dudley, back at you again. David Dudley Outdoors. And yes, this is discussion time. And actually, this is part 4 of a 4-part series where I go through the spawn, I dispel a lot of myths, okay? So if you haven't seen those videos, go back on the channel, watch part 1, part 2, part 3. It's educating you basically around the springtime. And it's probably stuff that you've never heard before, okay, and explained in ways. I even talk about a poo-poo theory and chicken eggs and all kinds of crazy mess, but I'd like to break it down redneck style, which is me. Like, I like to have things explained to me, and hopefully you guys learn a lot. All right, so today is what probably you've been waiting for the most, is me explaining, David, the transition from late spring to summer. You know, the question is, do I fish deep? Do I fish shallow? Do I go mid-range? What do the bass do? Where do we go? I get confused this time of year. I don't know what to do. You know, if I'm on this lake this time of year, what do I do? Well, guys, I'm about to explain to you what happens during this transition and what you need to do as an angler to follow these bass. And it's a confusing time of year. You guys want to know the magic potion, okay? This is when fish are moving a lot. There's a lot going on within their bodies. There's a lot of healing that has to be done. There's a lot of feeding that has to be done, but yet they're in that funky mood. So hopefully when I explain my thoughts of this time of year, you'll get a little better concept. And at the end of this video, what I want you guys to do is to come away with confidence. So confidence is saying, hey, I like to go shallow with a wacky worm, okay? I want you to remain confident doing that. Hey, I like to fish offshore, okay? I want you to remain confident doing that. Or if you like deep, I want you to remain confident doing that. But I want to explain to you why it's a tough time of year. Why is it confusing? It shouldn't be confusing, but yet it is. So we're going to go to my map drawings. We're going to go to my explanations on what I think happens. So here we go. It's pretty obvious that, and hopefully you guys can read this. Okay, so when fish move shallow, early spring, we're just going to take, for example, the Lake X has 10,000 bass, right? 10,000 bass. In early spring, all 10,000 bass move shallow. Why do they do that? They've been living in their deeper haunts. They're cold, and all of a sudden the water's warming up. All 10,000 bass are going to go shallow. Early spring, pre-spawn, they're shallow. Now, they're still going to remain shallow through the first spawners. So you know how you have waves of spawners. So all 10,000 bass are still shallow during this time of year. So we got early spawn coming into spawn. Okay, after the first spawn, right? Here's where confusion starts. I want you guys to understand what happens and why it's a tough time of the year. After the first spawn, say 3,000 of them spawned, and now there's 7,000 bass still shallow, and now 3,000 spawning. Excuse me, not spawning, 3,000 bass that we just don't know what they're doing, okay? But I'm going to explain these 3,000 and my thoughts on them. So now we have 7,000 that are still shallow, 3,000. So if you are fishing shallow, here's the point I want to make. If you are fishing shallow during the early spring and the first part of the spawn, life is good. Life is awesome because we're catching lots and lots of bass, doing anything we want. We think we're the best. We're going on tour. We're going to conquer the world. And then all of a sudden you take 3,000 away from this 10,000 that are up there shallow. Guess what? Fishing gets a little tougher. Now, all right, so now we're going into phase 2 of springtime, okay? So now phase 2 is this. Now we got 7,000 and 3,000 that are just kind of lost. And what I mean by lost, I'm going to explain that here in a second. Now we're what we call mid-spring. So of these 7,000 bass, now we got 3,000 that are actually spawning. Then we got 3,000 that are actually fry guarding. Now, I want to take a second and pause right here before we get here. I want to explain why this, even though they're shallow, now we're getting into even a tough shallow bite. So when we are shallow and there's still 3,000 spawning, there's still 3,000 that are guarding fry up there protecting whatever they're doing up there, that's still two different classes of fish. So what I mean by that, you still have one that's really shallow or relatively shallow, and he's up there on a stump or he's made his bed around a log or a lay down tree. That's him, that's them spawning. But yet there's a different class of fish that are fry guarders. So we got one that's down, quote unquote, deep, guarding the bed. Then we got fry guarders that are up on the top of a log or underneath a dock or laying up underneath the shade. But we're flipping, and then the flipping bite starts to slow down because there's two different class of fish that we're targeting with one bait. There's really no happy medium. So now fishing has went from all 7,000 or 10,000 spawners to now we got some that's hatched out. So now our population of bass that we're targeting is cut in half again. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Hopefully you're following me. So now we got 3,000, 3,000, and if I'm throwing a Texas rig, that's this fry garter, thoom, it went right by him. He didn't bite it, but this spawner bit it. So we're splitting the population of bass. Now, let's go back to my map. All right, so now that we just talked about this 3,000 right here and this 3,000, this is what I'm going to call floaters, okay? Floaters are these 3,000 bass that I really don't know what they do. Now we went from 3,000 to 3,000. Now the shift is going this way. The shift is going towards the latter part of the spring, the latter part of the spawning time. So now we're going to 4,000 bass. It's still the same 10,000 bass, but you see this increasing over here. So we got a different class of fish, and then fish that right now are confused. So let's go back to this camera and we'll talk. So what do I mean by confused bass? We're talking in the beginning there was 3,000 that were hanging around, and then now there's 4,000. That group of confused bass is getting bigger and bigger. And what I mean by confused is this. There's certain things that trigger bass to do to go isolate themselves somewhere, or to migrate a certain way, or to head to deeper haunts, or whatever it may be. So what I'm saying is this: if you're a female and you just got, just went through the process, you're exhausted, and it's the first part of the year, it's not like she's headed right back out to deep water and she's going to go live in the deeper water haunts. Why? Because the water is still cold. And what I mean by these confused bass, in the springtime, we like to get cooled off, but yet we like that little warmth. So these bass are just kind of floating around. Do I have a thought process for you guys that say, go off of this channel and hit this swing point and you'll find these confused bass? No, I'm not. Some of these confused bass just kind of eased on out, and they're just right below your boat in 3 foot of water. They're not on a point, they're not on a ledge, they're not on a piece of structure, they're not on a brush pile. They're just kind of out there roaming around, right? Just cruising around. And then as you get later and later into the summer is when their movement and their migration starts to happen. So right now, I know I'm throwing a lot of things at you, but understand this, is that we got 6,000 that are still shallow. This is mid-spring. Now we're going into 4,000. There's more starting to get confused. Now, I don't like to be cold all the time. I like to be warm. There's a certain temperature, but we're getting later into spawn. So what's happening now? The water's warming up. It's getting a lot hotter. And now we're going to go back to the map and talk about a little bit more. So this is what I like to call late spring. So we had 6,000. Now watch this. Instead of 3 and 3, now there's 2,000 spawners, 4,000 fry garters. Now the other 4, some of them have already started because we're in late spring. Now we got 2,000 bass that are in the 5 to 8 foot range, just shallow points, shallow whatever it may be. And then we got 2,000 bass that said, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm ready to go out here. Now, why does that make it confusing? It's because there's only 2,000 shallow. There, and I'm just throwing numbers. There might be 4,000 still guarding eggs, 2,000 that made a stop off on a shallow point, and then 2,000 that went out deep. So if you go out graphing, and you cannot graph in 5 to 8 foot of water. But if you go out there graphing out deep, you're like, I found a few dots. I found, I graphed a few fish, but they're not there yet. Why? Because of this. What makes it tough, guys? What makes it a confusing time of year? I can't sit here and give you the secret method. Now, let's go into now we're going from spring to what we call like the first part of the summer in your region, wherever you're at. We're going to the first part of summer. Now, they're done spawning, guys. You see this shift, right? You see this shift? Now, the shift is going from 0 spawners to maybe 2,000 leftover garden fry, 4,000 in the 5 to 8 foot range, and 4,000. So you're watching this time of year, shift, and you watch the numbers just keep getting bigger and bigger. Now, here's where we hit the first part of summer. You guys want to know this? We're in the first part of summer. There's definitely no spawners. There's always going to be fish shallow. Always. Then there's going to be some left over, which is probably these guys hitting that stop on the way out. And then now we got 7,000 that are deep. This is when we like it. So let's go back to this camera. So what happens is that we like it when they get to 7,000. Most fish go deep. The only time that fish, all 10,000 bass pretty much go deep is in the winter. And then once you hit springtime, summertime, fall, it gets confusing, it gets tough because populations of bass are everywhere. There's a few thousand that are still shallow, a few thousand that are mid-range, a few thousand that are suspended. That's what makes fishing tough. So to sit here and give you an explanation and say, hey, if you go to this, that'll solve all your problems, because it's not that way. There's no secret potion. There's no secret thing. But we do know this, is that you have to follow the movement. In all this that I just explained to you, everything happens within a week and a half. So I'm talking like within a month period, most everything that I'm talking about. So let's use June. From June, the first week of June to the second week of June, yeah, that's a big change. From the second week of June to the third week of June, oh, big change. And the fourth week of June, oh yeah, big change. So if you are faced with a tournament in these situations or these certain times of year, understand that it's just a tough time of year. And the only thing that I can encourage you to do is you better be good at what you do, and you better know how to catch them at all depth range. And what I mean by that, if you're a strong shallow water fisherman, hey, take your chances, but you only got 2,000 bass that are available to you late spring to go. Can you win it shallow? Absolutely. But the majority of the bass, you have to know that their movements and where they're headed during that time of year. Is that time of year confusing? Yes. Do I wish I could have gave you a magic potion? Yes, I wish I could. And I can't I can't get dogmatic. You guys know me enough that if I'm dead set on something, I'm going to tell you. But I just wanted you guys to understand that this is a time of year where you have to take your strengths and what you're good at, and if you're good at all 4 weeks of June, and you can catch them deep, you can graph, you can find them. And I will tell you this, is that when they get to that 5 to 8 foot range, we all love to graph, we all love to structure scan, use our Lowrance and go all over the place. We like that, but when they're that shallow, it's hard to do, and which requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of things going on that time of year where you have to fish for them. When they get out there way deep and we just drive around and like, oh, there they are. Yeah, we can fish faster with our depth finder. But during that mid-range time of year, it takes old school. We have to cast to find them. We have to fish to find them. We can't just use our electronics. So, guys, don't get frustrated during that transition time of the year. We all love it pre-spawn. We all love it when they first come up because we think we're the best fishermen in the world. But just understand that within the next 3 typically to 4 weeks, things are going to change rapidly. And one of the greatest examples of here recently was when BPT was at Table Rock. You saw everybody casting to the bank, just ripping them. And we know Aaron Martins intersected them at a stopping point, but he was still sight fishing shallow, 10-foot range, sight fishing with his depth finders, looking at them with his depth finders. What did they do? They just got done, come back 1 week. Guys, 1 week later. Did some people still catch them shallow? Absolutely. But you watched a 1 week change go from where they destroyed them along the banks, just everywhere, to they're on off the banks, graphing them and doing all kinds of stuff. Guys, you got to be versatile. That doesn't mean, again, you can't catch them shallow or mid-range or whatever. There was people catching them all different ways, but that's how quick things change this time of year. Guys, go back, surf the channel. You guys have been great to me. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Share this if you get a chance, if you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you guys. So we are out of here.